Hey, can everyone hear me? Okay, this thing is on. It's great to meet you all. My name is Drumkit. I'm one of the co-founders at Drumkit, mostly on the go-to-market side, but I'm an engineer at heart, so please pepper me with technical questions. I will probably get them wrong. I want to tell you up front, I'm no good at slides, and so if you see typos or anything like that, I'm looking for an agentic AI to solve that for me. Please, send me recommendations. I'm looking forward to those. I was asked a little bit to talk about how we should think about ROI and headcount and replacing headcount with AI, what that should look like. I want to think about it a little bit differently. Let's talk about drumming up more revenue and keeping the band together with AI. Look, the new normal, in my opinion, is the hard truth that with tariffs, with capacity going up and just feeling looser, with lower rates and your competitors' cost per loads going down, to me, it's just not clear that this cycle that we feel like we're in, we're ever going to get out of. I think the reality is that if this is the trough, we should build for the trough. We should build our businesses for the space that we're in today, as opposed to, hoping for a future that might be different. And so the question is, given that we're in this position today, how do we compete? How do we survive? The growth paradox that we've always been met with, and I think Steve pointed this out with Kaylee just moments ago, is that to grow our businesses, traditionally, we've always had to increase headcount, and linearly, we'd see an increase in revenue. There's great research out there that talks about how the revenue per head at brokerages varies substantially, but is kind of the same and has stayed the same for the last several years, if not decades. If that paradigm has to change in a world where we have these new tools and in a world where the market, doesn't recover from where we are today, then we need to be thinking about what that growth opportunity looks like, where revenue increases substantially, but we can maintain headcount, as opposed to I have to nix entire parts of my organization. I should be thinking about how do I get more value out of those team members and continue to build my business. Because the reality is that the most core and valuable part of any business, especially your business, is yourself and the team that you have. So the question we shouldn't be asking is how much will AI reduce headcount, but rather how much additional revenue can I generate using some of the magical tools that are out there today. It doesn't have to be AI. It could even be tools like that just bring you the best data. It could be tools that give you great integrations. It could be tools that streamline your workflow. But we're all here for the supply chain AI conference, so it's all going to be AI for now. Ultimately, it's got to be about this mindset shift. That's the main thing that we like to think about. How do we take that question from, okay, I got to reduce my costs and operations, to I need to increase my margins and increase my revenue multiple across those people, as opposed to replacing team members, enhancing those team members. Jet said this earlier, where their team headcount hasn't actually changed substantially. They just get a lot more out of those individual team members. They have these new tools that let them automate entire parts of the workflow so that person can use their headspace on tasks that AI can't handle. We've all used ChatGPT in this room, or Claude, or any of those other tools. We've seen it have typos. We've seen it make mistakes. That's the reason why you have a person involved in that conversation. Finally, as opposed to thinking about stability and steering the ship in a tough situation like today, why not use this opportunity to think about growth? You have to either evolve or die. In this scenario where we don't know what's going to happen politically down the street with the trade war. We don't know what's going to happen with carriers changing their rates and going out of business, shippers' proclivity and ability to alter that for brokers. We don't know that, and so let's focus on growth as opposed to stability. Reinvent your organization, and then finally, ultimately, all of this comes down to, don't worry about the short term. Let's think about the long term as much as you can. So we like to call it the drums method, for obvious reasons. And the way we think about this is, don't worry about AI. Don't worry about automation. Don't worry about any of that. Just think about what the tools are that you think will actually benefit your business. Don't worry about any of the other fancy stuff that everyone, including myself, will try to sell you. Think about defining your automation requirements. Like what's actually valuable to you and your business. The way that that usually works is you go through and you look at your organization and say, here's where I spend the most amount of time. Here's where I have the most amount of people. Here's the thing that's the biggest cost center for me. Or, and most critically, here's where I just think there's more money to be made. I'll give you an example of a company that we worked with. Large broker, primarily did contract freight, and we went up to them, we were pitching our product, and they said, guys, stop, like, I like you, you guys are cool, but we just don't have more revenue available to us. It just doesn't exist. And excuse my language, that's bullshit. Right? Like the reality is that they had we discovered over 30 days, $48 million in new opportunity that they were just ignoring. That doesn't come from automation. That doesn't come from, well, it came somewhat from AI, but it really came from understanding their core business, realizing that, okay, we actually do have more revenue available to us that we should prioritize. And then they went down the rest of the drums method. They realized that their data collection was flawed. They didn't have a good idea of how many opportunities they had in their inbox. They didn't have a good idea of how much revenue their contract customers were sending as potential spot freight. Then they talked to their team. That goes back to the understanding team concerns. And so they went in and they said, hey, like we're using this new tool that's going to discover new opportunities for us. Whoa. Does that mean you're automating my job? Does that mean I'm out of, like, you don't need me anymore? You're going to bid on all this freight yourselves? No, of course not. What it means is that someone who's good at using these tools is going to make more money than you. And so our net headcount probably won't change, but the way that the skill level of our team will probably change. And either you can evolve or die. And so that's what that looks like. Understand what folks want on your team, what they'll benefit from, what their actual, like what value we can deliver to them, and then help them scale up. Finally, and most importantly, I think this is, we talked about a bunch of things that are important. I think this is the most important part. Make sure that whatever vendor you go with, whatever tool you build internally, you have a dashboard. You understand the metrics. And you understand whether it's A, actually generating value, and B, actually generating ROI. And we'll talk about how to calculate that in just a moment. And then finally, once it works, man, it works. Scale it across your entire business as fast as you can. Because the goal, as I said earlier, is growth, not stability. And so anything that you can do that works across your business, scale it up, take that bet, and see and experiment cleanly, following the drums method, which I personally, take a liking to, and then go from there. Scale it across your organization. ROI with AI is always a little bit tricky because folks want to say, well, I fired 1,000 people, and so I'm saving all this money, and we automated their jobs. Most likely you're going to hire those people back. That's what happened with all of the famous AI cases, Spotify, Klarna, Shopify, all the IFIs, basically rehired all of those folks that they fired because of AI automation. The reality is that people work with people want to work with people, and people look for people to work with. Take a shot every time I say people. But so the way we actually think about calculating the ROI isn't rolling back headcount, but rather, okay, how have I expanded my loads per head per day? What does that look like in my business now? Make sure that you have the clear metrics, the M of the drums, to be able to understand that critical piece. What does my customer retention look like? Do I have net revenue retention with my users? Do I have net revenue retention with folks? Am I able to capture new opportunities from my contract customers or generate contracts from my spot customers? These are the types of things that you can the levers that you can start to pull to genuinely start to understand, okay, like where does my business go? Speed to market is obviously really critical. That's both on the, both on the operations side as well as on the sales side, because anything operationally, if you're on top of it, you're on top of it. And that's what some of these AI and automation tools can help you actually do. And then finally, revenue attribution is always difficult with anything, whether it's a marketing event like sponsoring the Freightwaves conference, or whether it's just, you hired a new SDR or you bought a new automation tool. I get that. The cleanest way, in our opinion, to look at AI style attribution is how quickly did an AI tool actually get on top of, responding to that customer, get on top of actually generating that direct value to the user. So overall, summarizing it back, whether you're investing in operations, whether you're investing in sales, ultimately your goal should be measuring your success on revenue, not on cutting costs. Because at the end of the day, our goal is to create exceptional value for your customer and to teach me how to spell. So apologies for that. I think I have a minute and a half. Anyone have any questions in the audience? Should have had a plant. Coleman, you have any questions?
What do you see space turning into 5?
It's a great question. Thank you, Coleman. I appreciate the question that I didn't ask you to ask. So look, I think that's a really good question. The question was, where do we think the space goes in the next 5 years? I think the reality is, let's just frame it down to brokerage AI, which I think is what most people are talking about here anyway. The reality is that people still buy from people. You might have, there's this myth of the $100 million brokerage run by one person. The reality is that if you feel like people still buy from people, that one person can't talk to all of their customers that are required to run a $100 million business in a single day, a single week. And so as many of those actual rote tasks as you can automate, if you're dealing with anything customer facing, you're going to need people to do that. There's a reason we don't buy houses off of Zillow.com or Redfin.com, even though that was the original pitch. We still look for that leasing agent, that real estate agent to walk us around the neighborhood and tell us what's going on. Think about it from your shipper's perspective. They're giving you $1 million, $2 million worth of freight in a truck. They don't know who's the driver. They don't know who the driver is. They barely know who you are, but they're trusting you with that. They're not going to trust ChatGPT with that. And so that's, I don't think at any point we're going to see full automation of the brokerage space. People have tried, and I think the reality is that that's just not where this is going to go. Cool. Thank you so much. It's great to meet you all. I really appreciate the time.